All right, everybody, we're going to talk about a really interesting subject today. We're going to talk about a very not so nice guy in a very bloody time in history. We're going to talk about King Henry VIII and the English Reformation. So, King Henry VIII, he had a problem. He didn't have a son. He needed a son in case he died so that his son could become king and his name would live on. However, King Henry VIII had been married to a lady named Catherine of Aragon for nearly 20 years, and she only gave him one child, a daughter, Queen Mary, or sorry, spoiler alert, uh, daughter Mary. Um, now, because of this, King Henry VIII wanted a new wife, and he had already started to see his mistress, a girl named Anne Boleyn, and he wanted to marry her so that he could have a son. Well, King Henry here, he went to the Pope and said, "Hey, Pope, now Catherine was my brother's wife. When he died, I felt sorry for her. I married her, and however, that's still kind of wrong. Can we go ahead and get that marriage just kind of taken off my chart, and I can start over again?" And the Pope was like, "You did say death do us part, right? No, no divorce for you." And so King Henry VIII was like, "Please." And the Pope was like, "No, begone, you peasant." He goes, "I'm a king, not a peasant." And so on his way back from Italy, or Rome, uh, King Henry VIII had an idea. He said, I could make it death do us part. Oh, but I'll be nice this time. Um, that's it. I'll become the Pope of King. I'll be the Pope of England. I'll become the leader of the English Church. We'll no longer be Catholic. We'll be English. Yeah, it'll be a Church of England. Yeah, the Church of England. That sounds really good. Ooh, hey, if I'm the Church of England, that means I could also get all the lands that the Catholic Church had. Yeah, which means more money in my pocket. Oh, and then the tithe that all the English have to pay to the Catholics, that can now come to the king. And so I could collect taxes and tithes. Ooh, we're definitely going to beat the French in our next war. So, King Henry, he made himself the Pope of the English Church. He got the Parliament to sign the divorce papers, and Catherine was out. Okay. So, Henry makes himself the leader of the Catholic Church to grant his own divorce. He takes the land owned by the Catholic Church away from him and sells it for money. He makes a clergy convert to this new Church of England, or he kills them, burns them at the stake. All tithes now go straight to the king's treasury, which means he can now collect taxes twice. And Henry has a new Bible made that is written in English, not Roman Catholic, or Roman Latin, sorry. Meanwhile, Henry marries Anne Boleyn. Okay. Anne Boleyn was a sweet girl of, I believe, 16 when she met young Henry, when he was still married, or not, sorry, middle-aged Henry, when he was still married to Anne Boleyn. Let me start that over, guys. Anne Boleyn was, I believe, 15 when she first met the middle-aged uh, King Henry VIII here, while he was still married to Catherine of Aragon. They secretly get married because King Henry believes that the Pope will grant his uh, divorce, but when it doesn't, King Henry, of course, makes himself the leader of the English Church. And Anne gets pregnant. However, it's not a girl. It's not a boy. It's a girl. And Anne is worried for her life and takes what's called a paramour, which is a lover who was not her husband, so that she could produce a male son. But she is found out, and well, heads will roll. Um, Now, let me give you a little secret about King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII will get married 6 times. Okay? There's only one person who gives him a male son. Now, he believes that it is the woman's fault for not giving him the child. However, science has recently found, especially with genetics, that there truly isn't a 50-50 chance of either getting a male or a female baby. It is the male who will determine if the baby is going to, what gender the baby is going to be. His DNA determines what the baby will be. Now, I'll give you an example. Okay, it is not a 50-50 chance. My grandfather, his mother was the daughter of 6. Her father had 6 girls. Okay, my grandfather's mother, on my mother's side, okay, he's the one that has, and then he was born, but his dad determined that there will be 3 boys. Okay, my grandfather, he has 4 girls, 1 boy. Okay, so my mother's father had 4 girls, 1 boy. Now remember, his father before him, or his grandfather before him, had 6 girls. So the likelihood, if you do the genetics, that I myself would actually have a boy for a as a baby is actually pretty slim. I believe when I did the genetic record on it, it's only 25% chance, maybe even less than that. So of course, when I had a baby, I already knew I was going to have a girl. And you know what? I have a beautiful baby. Uh, you guys have heard me talk about Ava all the time. If I was to have another baby, I would probably guess it's going to be a girl. And that's simply because of the genetics. My genetics, and since I'm the one who determines the whether it's going to be a male or a female, my history, my genetic history states that I will more than likely have girls. Well, guess what? King Henry VIII, his genetics said that he would more than likely have girls. If you go back in the English tree, boys were very hard to come by. Every other monarch would have boys, okay? Henry just happened to be on the side where his genetics would say that he would most usually have girls. Well, that's what happened to Henry. Henry had ended up having like 8 kids, only 1 boy. So that's genetics for you. But it was all King Henry's fault. But back then they believed it was the wife's fault, unfortunately. Sorry, ladies. Here are some pictures of Anne Boleyn saying goodbye to her daughter before she is beheaded, and saying goodbye to her mother. And then, of course, there's the woodblock carving of the day of her execution. Now, Henry would have 3 more wives and persecuted the Catholics. So Henry wasn't a very nice guy. He was an egomaniac. He just did not like people. Okay, so Jane Seymour, his 3rd wife, finally did give Henry VIII a son, but she would die about 6 days later due to complications of the pregnancy. Anne Cleves, okay, she had a really good artist make her portrait. Henry was looking for a new wife. They send him 5 or 6 different perspective portraits, and he chooses Anne Cleves' portrait painting, thinking that she would be very beautiful. Well, her artist was really good at Photoshop and fixed the painting so that she looked really pretty. When she came to the wedding and King Henry lifted up the veil, he actually scoffed at her because he thought she was so ugly. They were only married for about 6 months, and he had the wedding annulled, and then Anne Cleves became the sister to the king. That was just a way of keeping her in court, and keeping her influence there. Meanwhile, King Henry VIII, of course, found another girl, Catherine Howard. She did not like, by this time, King Henry VIII probably weighed well over 400 pounds. And so Catherine Howard was uh, she was a very young 19-year-old, very beautiful girl. She started to take on a paramour of her own, She too was found out, and King Henry VIII had her beheaded. Um, and then along comes Catherine Parr. She was a Protestant. No, I'm sorry, she was a Catholic. She became arrested. Henry thought she was beautiful. He said, if you convert to Catholicism and you marry me, you won't die. So she marries him, but luckily, a year later, before she ever has to produce another son or anything like that, King Henry will die. So she got lucky. All right, that's enough of the wives. Um, Listen to the two song videos that I posted, they'll give you more information. So death, sickness, and blood. So King Henry dies at the age of 55 due to being very obese. During this time period, the fatter the king, the more important the king, I guess, during this time period. They had a disease that they had. They called it the king's disease, and it was called gout, and it was due to eating so much fatty food that you couldn't walk. And well, yeah, King Henry VIII had that issue. His son, at the age of, I think it's 13, took the crown, but would die 2 years later due to a sickness. The sickness, it's called the wasting disease back then. It was probably tuberculosis, which causes your lungs to become very weak and you start to cough up blood. It's very gross, very sickening. So Henry's daughter, you remember the one that I spoiled you, Queen Mary, would take the throne. And however, before the church converted to, or before England converted to being Protestant underneath the Church of England, she was raised a Catholic, especially by the Spanish Catholic crown. You know, Franz Ferdinand and his wife Isabella, the ones that would pay Columbus to go to the New World and convert all the Native Americans to Catholics. Yeah, them. Um, and she was part of their line. And when she takes the crown, she pretty much persecutes all of the Protestants, forces England to go back to becoming Catholic. And in a single day, she will have 300 followers of the Protestant Anglican Church burned at the stake. And that is where she gets the term Bloody Mary. Those of you who have been in the dark in the bathroom and you say Bloody Mary, and I won't finish it because I'm too scared from back whenever I was a kid. Anyways, she was supposedly supposed to appear in the mirror behind you and creep you out. So, yeah, that same Bloody Mary. All right, this is Bloody Mary here on the left-hand side, and here are some woodblock carvings from the newspapers back then about the burning of the Protestants. Well, her daughter, who was raised Protestant secretly, overtakes Queen Mary. Her name was Queen Elizabeth I, and she brings back Protestants. She makes Protestants a mandatory for citizenship in England. A group and so she starts putting in a whole bunch of new laws and stuff, making the Church of England um, be the religion that it is today. However, due to her staunch rules, a new group of Protestants forms in England, and they are called the Puritans. They're tired of the Catholics and the Church of England, and they want to purify the Christian religion back to its original roots. So this causes a major civil war within England. Okay, some of the Puritans, before the Civil War starts, flee and start a new colony in the New World. You know, the Pilgrims. Yeah, and then the other ones, especially a person named Oliver Cromwell, take over the crown and actually kick the king and queen out of England for some short time period. And they rule England as a new Protestant Puritan uh, country. However, no one likes Puritans because they were so religiously strict that both the Catholics and the Protestants come together underneath a truce and kick out the the Puritans. No one really cared for old Crommy Wimey. So once the Puritans are all go to the New World, the Catholics and Protestants no longer have someone to fight and no longer have a common goal, so they start fighting each other once again. Okay. So a couple of kings and queens go back and forth. The Catholics take over, the Protestants take over, the Catholics take over, Protestants take over, blah 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 for about 100 years. Then all of a sudden, you have this guy named King James, who is Catholic. Yes, the guy that wrote the Holy Bible that we have today, called the King James Version. He is a Catholic, and he actually sets it up to where he has a son who is also Catholic. So that means you will have two generations of Catholic kings, which means that England could remain 100% Catholic from here on out again. However, again, secretly, King James's daughter, Mary II, was raised Protestant in the Church of England. She and a guy named William of Orange, which Orange meant that he was from the country of the Netherlands, their flag being orange, they team up together and they actually get an army together, march into London, and say, "Yo, King James, get thee out." King James really realizing that he doesn't want bloodshed anymore because he's tired of it, and he's always been kind of a peaceful king. He didn't persecute the Puritans at all, or not the Puritans. I'm sorry, the Protestants. He freely gives up the crown to his daughter, and once again, the Church of England is in power, and William of Orange and Queen Mary II rule together underneath the Protestant religion. Okay? There wasn't anybody in England who died. There wasn't any war in England that died. However, Ireland is Catholic. Ireland gets an army together, supports King James, and they go to war against England. Scotland, which is not underneath the Church of England, but have been Protestant for several hundred years now, especially under the Presbyterian uh, Protestant religion, they join up with the Protestants, especially William of Orange, and they form the United Kingdom for the first time. So you have Scotland, Wales, and England come together underneath the United Kingdom banner versus the Catholic Irish. They will send Scottish Presbyterians into Northern Ireland and settle that Northern Ireland area that we were talking about with the Troubles. Okay, here's King William, Mary over here, and then of course you have King James over here on the side throwing some shade. Again, Scotland was Protestant, Ireland was Catholic. Need I say more? Throughout all this, the Scottish, they would always support the Protestant monarchs, and the Irish would always support the Catholic monarchs. When the Protestants end up ruling England, the Protestants hated the Catholic Irish to the point that it was it was very, very bad. So the Protestant king at the time started a pro-Protestant colony of Scottish or Scotsmen in Ireland. This made Southern Catholic Irish mad, and they started to fight the English. But due to the potato famine, killing about 5 million Irishmen and 5 million more fleeing to the United States, the war was really put on hold. And the English, who technically had ruled over the Irish, did not help the Irish out at all. They kind of just let them starve to death. Um, Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, that was ruled by the Scots, um, they helped them. The English helped them out tremendously by sending aid and food, and they fared fairly well. Well, this just made more and more resentment in the Southern Catholic Irish against the pro-Protestant North. And that is where we will end today, because that will start our troubles when we talk about it again tomorrow in 1906. So, um, rewatch this video if you can a couple of times. Do some of your own research on King Henry VIII. There was a lot of things that I couldn't say in this, and so he's actually a pretty interesting dude. So your assignment for this is to do the research on King Henry VIII and send me a link of an article that you find and read or a YouTube video that you have found. So your assignment is to send me a link of something that you have either read or watched about King Henry VIII. Thank you.